Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. This is the show where we answer your questions about movies, TV shows, comic books, apes. As always, I'm your host.
Damn dirty apes.
Those damn dirty apes. Do you ever feel weird saying it? Does it feel weird? Because the way he says it, you're like, I don't know.
Get your stinking paws off me.
It's that Charlton Heston voice. You're like, I'm not so sure, man. I'm not so sure.
I know. And especially learning his politics
man.
outside of the movie industry.
You're like, well, I don't know. Anyway, I'm your host, DJ Woldridge. Who was that other voice? Oh, my goodness. It's a Mr. Steve Zaragoza.
Hey.
How you doing?
What's up, brother?
I'm going to say how you doing like we haven't done that a couple times already. How you doing?
How you doing? I'm good, man. I'm a little tired from a late night, but I'm so excited. When you hit me up and you were like, dude, we got to talk about, or do you want to come talk about Planet of the Apes?
Yep.
And you're like, you're the first person I thought of. I was like, oh, dude, come on. I'm always down to talk about Planet of the Apes. One of the most underrated science fiction sagas of our time.
Listen, it's funny you mentioned that, man, because it's been on my mind a lot. Because when the movie we're talking about today is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and I went back and I rewatched the most recent trilogy, Rise, Dawn, and War, and it's so funny to me, like, and that's going to be kind of one of our main talking points today is like, why this franchise? Like, because if you just on paper, your pitch is like, my crazy sci-fi ideas. Imagine if the planet Earth was overrun by a race of intelligent primates. You're like, that's it. That's the world we live in. What are you talking about? That's how it is. That's not a leap. That's just what it is.
But wait, hear me out.
Hold on. And so, so we're talking about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and for people that aren't familiar with you, Steve, which if you're watching the show or listening to this podcast, I'm sure you are, but for those that maybe you're just tuning in, who are you? Where can they find you? What are you up to?
Well, I guess I'm an internet comedian, bonkers boy, who does a little podcast with my friend Mike Falzone called Dynamic Banter. And, I don't know, maybe you've seen me in some things or heard my grating voice in this or that. But I guess I'm but I'm also a huge movie nerd. Yes. and such a fan of the Planet of the Apes that the second tattoo I ever got was Dr. Zaius.
Dr. Zaius. I couldn't remember.
Right,
it was
here.
Like, was it Cornelius or Zaius? I couldn't remember.
It's Zaius.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, I love the classic trilogy so much.
Yeah.
I've always loved it. There's something. Well, I'll tell you what the something is. I was like, there's something about that first one. But what it is about that first one is that Rod Serling wrote that screenplay. Yep. And so we essentially got a Twilight Zone movie.
Yep.
And I still to this day feel like that first movie feels like a Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah,
and I love the Twilight Zone. I'm such a huge Twilight Zone fan, and there's really rarely any bad ones in there. But the one thing about the Twilight Zone was that you would fall in love with some of these characters and these stories, and you would never get more of them.
Yeah.
And so the Planet of the Apes movies felt to me like we got one big Twilight Zone movie, and then the rest of them are more Twilight Zone movies in that universe.
Yeah.
And that's how I've always kind of seen them. And when I watch them like that, I'm like, well, this is just cool, spooky, groovy 70s, late 60s sci-fi, high concept sci-fi. And to your thing about like, what is this story and why are we interested in this and why this trilogy and shit? And it's like, but the book came out in the 60s.
Yep.
And that was like a bonkers concept back in the 60s. This was before we had every concept and idea presented to us ad nauseum.
That's where you could create this idea before most of the population believed in evolution. You're like, this is the time for this idea.
Right. They're like, let's fuck with everything we still don't know.
Yeah.
That's why we're probably going to see a bunch of AI as the villain movies for the next 5 years, because like we don't really know the end result of AI. Yeah. So, we don't know a lot about evolution in the 60s. So So yeah, like, and also it's kind of disappointing that because the book has, and I think Rod Serling's original screenplay of the Planet of the Apes showed a like a metropolis city that the apes lived in with like cars and planes and everything. It was like a modern society, but back in the 60s they were like, well, we're not going to make this fucking movie, it's too expensive.
It's way too expensive.
So that's where we got this kind of like primitive, you know, like almost Neanderthal kind of like, you know, basis for all the stylistic Planet of the Apes things. But I'm bummed that even now we're still in the jungle and we're still with huts and like learning how to use fire and tools. It's like, come on,
get there.
Isn't it 1,000 years now? Haven't 1,000 years passed?
We'll talk about that when we get into Kingdom of the Apes, because I have some questions about the timeline, the way it's presented. But before we get into that, as always, a little business up top. If you want to hear our Patreon exclusive shows like Spider-Versity or What We're Into, stuff like that, you can do that over at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. If you listen on iTunes, please give us 5 stars. We really appreciate it. And if you listen on Spotify, check out this very episode for a question that you can answer that we will read on the next episode. And before we get into any more ape stuff, some news did drop that I wanted to talk about with Steve. We got the announcement. This is via Variety. There's a new Lord of the Rings movie on the horizon. Quote, the original Lord of the Rings trilogy filmmaker Peter Jackson and his partners Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens are producing the movie and will be involved every step of the way. Press release from Warner Brothers later Thursday morning, the studio revealed that the working title for this new Lord of the Rings film is Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum, and it will be directed by and star Andy Serkis in the titular role. Steve, more Lord of the Rings, but specifically Gollum.
Yeah, everyone's favorite character.
Yes, they're like, please, more of that creepy weirdo. Gimme.
Yeah, that gross guy that ate a raw fish in our face back in 2009 or whatever year fucking Two Towers came out.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That is my first thought whenever someone's like, we got a Gollum movie coming. I'm always like, when you ask people who are their top 3 favorite Lord of the Rings characters, is Gollum even in there?
Yeah. I don't. That's a great question. It's clearly one of those things of like, well, Andy Serkis is directing movies now, and he did the Venom. He did the Venom 2. So let's get him back in the mocap too. I'm surprised he wants to do it. I'm surprised because he's established. You know, this ties into our Apes conversation. He went from Gollum. I think he did Peter Jackson's. He played Kong in Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Yeah.
And then he went to play Caesar in the Planet of the Apes reboots. But outside of doing the mocap stuff, he's established himself as a really talented actor, you know, because he's been in Age of Ultron, he was in Andor, like he's done a bunch of stuff. You'd think he'd be like, nah, man, I'm good. I don't need to put on the mocap suit ever again. I did my time.
Dude, we just live in a time where like, and I think, you know, Planet of the Apes is also connected to this thought.
Yeah.
That like the studios are all they really care about is their franchises and stuff. Their franchises and their nostalgic franchises that they could just build and build and build forever. And you know, I was thinking leaving this Planet of the Apes, not to jump too ahead into the spoiler territory of our review of the new Planet of the Apes. But I came out of that movie and I was like, man, we might not get another one of these now. And then I was like, that makes me really sad. But then I was thinking, but wait a minute. This is a franchise that has made X amount of dollars since the James Franco version, at least.
Yeah.
Let's not even talk about how much money cumulatively the original series with the new ones have made. So clearly there is a lot of money in that series. And so, you know, you think about things like Lord of the Rings and you're like, man, there's no better piece of literature to rip literally every period out of and like make it into a movie or a show or whatever. So I guess I was kind of already prepared for the idea that we were going to get more Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah.
I just didn't think we'd get like spin-offs before we got like a full-on reboot.
Yeah, it's wild, man. And it's funny, to your point, too, with the Planet of the Apes movies. about how like, listen, dude, we're making a third Tron, and no Tron movies ever made money.
It's crazy.
It's ever made money, and this is not me saying the Tron movies are bad. I'm just saying they've never made money. So I don't know why we're doing a third one. I don't know why. And it's to your point. It's like, well, it's an IP we have. So God forbid we even entertain the idea of creating a new idea.
And it's like, I guess it's like, it's not all about us, DJ. It's not all about the critical movie goer. I know. It's not about us. And learning learning more about how it's not about us.
Yeah.
It makes it frustrating because it's like, we just crave rich storytelling.
Yeah.
With filmmaking that raises the bar.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. And what we keep getting is like the same shit over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's like tiring. And I'm thinking like, well, then the people that are craving the rich storytelling with bar raising directorial visuals aren't going to get that really as much as the people that just want to go on a Sunday morning to the matinee of some popcorn movie that they could sit with their family for a minute, or maybe get away from their family for a minute and just see some kind of big action thing and then leave the theater and never think about it again.
Yeah.
And I think those are the people that are being served these like reboots, prequels, nostalgia injections, like this Mufasa movie, dude. I was watching the trailer for it at the Planet of the Apes, and I was like, okay, so these are beloved characters. Mufasa, Simba, Rafiki. They're beloved characters, but this is not the representation of what made them beloved.
Yep.
What made them beloved was the animation and the beauty and the artistry that went into traditionally animating these things and blowing our minds in the 90s when movies like that weren't around. And now we're just like getting this facsimile, like, I'm looking at a real lion and you're telling me its name is Mufasa. And I'm like, I remember that name. Yeah. But when I think about that name, I think about the animated version.
Yeah.
The colorful yellow and maroon or whatever, orange.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, who are these for?
Yeah, no, 100%, man, 100%. And I think to me, it goes back to the reason they had the strikes and everything over this AI. The reason studios think they can get away with that shit is they've been trying to make art, movies, and TV as disposable as possible for years before that. They've been trying, like exactly like you're talking about, something that you put on while you fold the laundry. Yeah. And that's all it is, but that's not why Mufasa, to your example, why we remember that stuff. And I also bring up the example of like, could you imagine if in the 80s, 70s and 80s, instead of getting stuff like Star Wars and Ghostbusters and stuff like that, they were making a billion Searchers movies. Like they decided we're just going to keep making the Searchers until you keep watching it. You know what I mean? We're going to make those movies till the heat of the universe. And so there was no space for the Ghostbusters and the Star Wars of the world because they were too busy making like
looking at the numbers and being like, well, this is what people want. Yeah. Like people want like chips and Hawaii 5-0.
Yeah. And let's not make let's just keep making. We're going to make an Andy Griffith movie. It's going to be a full franchise because that's what people watched in the 50s when I was a kid. So God forbid, nothing new. The Dick Van Dyke movie.
Andy Griffith cinematic universe.
Yeah, man. Like it's because obviously there's a lot of this stuff from the 80s, homages stuff from the 50s, is influenced stuff by the 50s, Star Wars in particular. But it's not
that's
just
the thing, and that's why that's important, because the directors that we love, that like I love Joe Dante as a director. He directed so many amazing movies, and all of his inspiration was like that kind of shit. Yeah. Like Chips and Searchers and like, you know, stuff like that. So it was like, well, I understand that these things were necessary in our timeline in order for us to like get what we have. But in the timeline we're in now, we have one of the greatest filmmakers to ever exist, and I'm just gonna throw the name out there, name drop, James Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
We have James Cameron, who made Terminator 2,
Yeah.
arguably one of the most top-tier action movies ever made,
Yeah.
who is now spending every minute of their time making Avatar movies. What is this timeline? I want this guy to make more high-concept sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need any more the industry is ruining nature movies. I'm sick of it. We get it.
We get it. We get it. Come on. Give us more. The industry is the good guy.
Like, people with more... James Cameron has more money than we can fathom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that guy is like, but people with money are ruining the world. And it's like, what are you making here?
Yeah. Well,
where are the filmmakers struggling in the dirt making art?
Yeah.
You know, like, I need that shit. Not someone who's got more money than they'll ever know what to do with, staying in the same franchises that don't elicit joy.
Yeah. And you mentioned seeing trailer, Mufasa trailer for Planet of the Apes. One of the, because I saw Fall Guy the same week I saw Planet of the Apes. So one of those times there was a trailer for the new Alien movie, which looks fun, but it's one of those, what cool new sci-fi movie could I have gotten instead of another Alien movie?
Dude. Yes.
You know?
And look, don't get me wrong. There's a side of me that's like, and I just had this argument with friends, or I made this statement with friends the other day, which was just like, okay, Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire.
Yeah.
This is like the 6th fucking Ghostbusters movie or whatever. And as it was coming out, my friends were like not excited about it, but I was excited about it.
Yeah.
And I love Ghostbusters forever. And when I was a kid, like even before, or like when Ghostbusters 2 came out, I was like, loved every minute of it. I saw it in the theater, DJ. I'm showing you my age. I sat in that theater and I remember watching.
Quick peek at my age. Here it is. Don't tell anybody.
I watched Ghostbusters 2. Don't tell anybody. In the theater. And I remember thinking, like, after that movie, I was like, well, we just need more of that.
Yeah.
I want more of that. As a fan, I want more of that. And as I grew up, that want didn't go away.
Yeah.
And here I am as a 42-year-old man, and I'm like, well, I asked for this. I asked for Frozen Empire. I asked for Rogue One. I asked for all this Star Wars Marvel shit, and now here it is.
I wished on a monkey's paw, and now this is the universe I live in. Yeah.
So I constantly battle with the side of me that's like, this is what I wanted as a kid.
Yeah.
And now we have it. We have infinite Ghostbusters movies in all the tones and wants that you could possibly, with all the different you want Ant-Man as a Ghostbuster? You got it.
There he is.
There he is. And it's like, we asked for this. So I'm like, I can't keep being mad about it. You know, like it's kind of comes back to the whole, like, why don't we have this kind of thing? Why do we have more Avatar when I want a new sci-fi concept from James Cameron? And like you said with the Alien movie, like, I love aliens. I want more Alien movies. I'm surprised there aren't more Alien movies, to be quite honest. And same with Ghostbusters. I'm surprised we don't have fucking 12 Ghostbusters movies and a Ghostbusters series and an Alien series and a Predator series.
Oh, we're getting an Alien series. That's coming to FX.
I see. I know that's coming. I'm ready for it. And because I asked for it and I wanted it. And deep down in my child brain, I still want it. But then I see it like Frozen Empire or Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no. Oh man, but I asked for this.
I think I'm with you. I'm with you, man, because I get a lot of heat for like people. It doesn't how many times I talk about a movie I like. I'm always like, people are like, why do you hate everything? I like things, but I think it's one of those. I think when we talk about this stuff, and I feel like you and I are on the same page, it's more of a healthy balance. Like, because you're right, I still want, like, for me, Ghostbusters and Men in Black are the ones are like, why are we making movies instead of a TV show? These are built to do like a Monster of the Week.
Monster of the Week.
Yeah, the premise is so built for that. I don't know why we're not doing it.
Yeah.
But you also want space for, like, my wife and I, it just hit Max, and my wife and I just watched Iron Claw. And of course, it came out last year, but it's built as like a new A24 movie. It's this gritty drama, and watching it's like, no, this used to just be movies, man. This is your pretty standard boilerplate saccharine not feel good. It's a tragedy, but like Power of Family, biopic. Like it's standard. Like, but we have to treat those movies now as like there's some sort of special rare indie gem.
Like, here's a special thing.
No, this just used to be the movies we did, and we don't anymore. And it'd be kind of cool if we did again. I think it'd just be cool if that was a thing that like. And people could make the arguments. Well, people aren't going to see, like Fall Guy is another. We just used to make movies like that, but people aren't seeing it, and so we're not going to. And I don't know how to fix that aspect of it. But
I don't think there is a way to fix that. I think we're just plummeting towards the sun, or the sun is plummeting towards us. And while that happens, we're along for this roller coaster ride of whatever we get served based on a majority like vote, essentially. Like the majority of people want more Avatar movies, I guess. And the majority of people want more Alien movies and Planet of the Apes and Star Wars and Marvel. And but we can take comfort in the fact and enjoy the fact as a positive end. That we get movies like Iron Claw or whatever that movie is called. And we get movies like whatever Wes Anderson makes and whatever a lot of these auteur directors make. We get them, DJ. The thing is we do get what we want. We do. We get the whole like over abundance of Marvel Disney shit. But there's also good art movies still. It's just that we have to sift through a lot of bullshit.
we do. And I think that's a perfect note to transition into our main topic for today, which of course is the Planet of the Apes. And for those that are not familiar with one of the most successful sci-fi franchises, a little rundown. As Steve said, it was based off a book called Le Planète des Singes. I don't speak French, so I probably butchered that.
Pierre Boulet.
Yeah, Pierre Boulet, who also wrote The Bridge Over the River Kwai. There were 5 Planet of the Apes movies between 1968 and 1973.
And a TV series.
TV series in, what was that, 74? And an animated series in 1975. And I had written notes or whatever, but basically I've only seen the original Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes and the 3 new movies. So I haven't. My wife and I are talking.
Oh wow,
about
you haven't seen the other ones?
No, my wife and I are talking about going through the classics. But for those that aren't familiar, they involve time travel and closed loops and a lot of Roddy McDowall. I'm sure he passed away before the reboot movies, but it's a bummer we didn't get him and Andy Serkis on screen together. That would have been a fun little homage.
Because Roddy McDowall was the Andy Serkis of like the Planet of the Apes original trilogy times.
Yep. And then we got the Tim Burton reboot that was widely panned.
What's that?
Wait, which one? What?
What is that? Dude, I was watching Kingdom with my friend Matt, and the whole time he's like, Mark Wahlberg's going to show up. I know it. He's like, Mark Wahlberg. And then with that scene with William H. Macy, he's like, it's Mark Wahlberg. I told you. And I'm like, God damn it, you son of a bitch. Dude, honestly, I would have preferred if Mark Wahlberg showed up.
Dude, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna check that one out. I might take a little bit of a gummy before I see it, but I'm gonna check it out.
Maybe more of a little bit.
More of a little bit, because I never saw. It's one of those like at the time.
You never watched that one,
dude? Listen, at the time, early 2000s. I'm teens, maybe late teens, early 20s. I don't know what time. I'm teens. Shit. And my funds were limited, so if I heard like everybody's like this movie's trash, it's like, well, I'm not gonna go. See it. I'm not gonna go. I still haven't seen. Think about what I do for a living. I still haven't seen the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie.
Oh, what?
Never saw it because it's like, oh well, whatever. Fuck it. I don't give a shit.
At this point, I don't think you should. But
I feel like I feel obligated to now.
Maybe 10 years ago, you could. I think maybe. How about this? The next time when a Green Lantern movie gets greenlit, when there's a new one is coming, then watch.
Then go back and watch. I like that suggestion. And that brings us to the now times where we get the most recent reboots that starred Andy Serkis with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes. You talked about a little bit, Steve. Obviously, you have a lot of history with this. Have you seen all of them?
I have seen all of them.
Do you have a favorite? Like in your back pocket, like here's my favorite of all of them.
Well, certainly the original is my favorite. I mean, I always warn people who have never seen it that you're essentially going to be watching a courtroom drama with like a couple of cool action sequences. It's mostly a talkie that really is a slow burn, but man, is that movie a masterpiece. And if you if you really my best recommendation for watching the original Planet of the Apes, if you've never seen it, is to go in with the mindset of people who saw that in the 60s.
Yeah.
In the late 60s, early 70s. Those people had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no spoilers in the internet. There's
Yeah.
so people really, I'd say, try to enjoy it from the perspective of someone that has no idea what this is.
Yeah.
And also take your brain back to the 60s
Mhm.
before, again, we got ad nauseum storylines and that we've seen over and over again.
Yeah.
But I do love the first one quite a bit, but Escape from the Planet of the Apes is the third Planet of the Apes movie. And so I'll give you just a real quick rundown of my thoughts on all of them. First one, love it. Second one is really hard to watch.
That's what I was hearing. When I was doing my research, it seemed like the second one was not as loved.
I mean, okay, so in a world where like Star Trek was really cool and like people were into like, I don't know, it was just, it's a little cheesy, but the concept overall is good because you've got humans that stayed underground as all this stuff happened, and they developed like psychokinetic and telekinetic powers.
One of them's a Quado,
Yeah. But, as a result of like stuff like Fallout stuff, like, nuclear power, energy, and mutating people and having lived under the surface and, all this stuff. Like, if you really stretch your imagination, it works.
Yeah.
And then essentially the second movie ends with the destruction of Earth.
I love it, dude. It was really
it's incredible.
And they're like, because this was back in the day where you didn't do a billion sequels.
You did not.
But the one thing I love looking at this stuff is, and here I have for Escape of the Planet of the Apes. There was a telegram went out from like one of the producers or something, and he was like, after the second one did well, and he's like, apes exist, sequel required, and they're like, okay, I guess we have to undo nuking the entire planet.
But what they do is brilliant,
yeah,
and I love it. And it's like, try not to think about it too much.
Yep.
But I love it. And as a matter of fact, I believe they wanted Charlton Heston for the sequel, and he was like, absolutely not.
No,
I don't want to do that shit.
Yeah.
And they were like, what can we do to convince you to come back?
Yeah.
And he said, if I could destroy the planet and end the series, I will come back. So they literally they bring Charlton Heston back for like the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. But the whole movie, you're following this literal Charlton Heston clone.
Yeah.
And they've like reproduced the first movie almost to a T for a lot of the first half.
Yeah.
And then you're like looking for Charlton Heston's character the whole rest of the movie. And then finally in the last 10 minutes, you have this big final moment. These underground mutant humans worship the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And so Charlton Heston, everyone's getting shot up and dying, including Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
And as he dies, his hand reaches for the button on the missile and he presses it, and then boom, that's it.
Yeah.
World over.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the third one, they're like, okay, as the world was exploding, Cornelius and Zira, the two main scientist apes that helped Charlton Heston in the first movie, were repairing the spaceship that crashed from the first movie, and were able to take off, and the blast pushed them off the planet.
Love it.
Into the same trajectory that Taylor and Charlton Heston's crew used to get to the Planet of the Apes. They find a time portal,
whatever,
or
timey-wimey tunnel,
timey-wimey tunnel. And then in the third one, it opens with that ship landing on our modern day 70s Earth. And then when it opens up, it's like astronauts that pull their helmets off, and it's apes. And you're like, and from that moment on, you're like, oh, I'm in for a bonkers ride. And that movie is so bonkers. It's like silly and goofy. There's montages where the apes are like trying on suits like dresses and stuff. Incredible movie. And then it ends also in a really sad way. Cornelius and Zira are murdered. It's horrifying and awful. But their baby They had a baby
Yeah.
who survives, and you're thinking, well, that's the end of the Planet of the Apes. That's talking apes all dead, but the baby is a talking ape.
Yeah.
And then, and Ricardo Montalban takes the baby to a circus. Brilliant. And that's what the fourth movie is.
Yeah.
The apes being raised in the circus, and then but that's the one that's like the politically charged, civil unrest, people fighting the apes movie, the Uprising. Oh, that movie's, dude. So 1, 3, and 4 are incredible.
Yeah.
2 and 5, no good.
Yeah, that's 5, what I've heard. Yeah.
I think 5 is Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Let me look at my notes.
Or Conquest. Or no, Conquest is 4. Battle's 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so by the time they get to 5, they're like, there's no more money for these fucking movies. So you're using the masks.
Dude, that was another thing when I was looking this stuff up, is it was crazy because this doesn't happen now. Every movie was made for less money.
Yeah.
Like every subsequent their sequel, they're like, we need a sequel. These movies are doing well, but now you have half the budget.
Yeah, you don't get more.
As opposed to like something like to the point where Deadpool 3 is like 4 times the budget of Deadpool 1. And it's like, guys, what are you doing? What do you do? But Deadpool 2 made the same money as Deadpool 1. So it's like, what's happening?
But see, but doesn't that make it kind of like it because when you have way less of a budget, and you have to follow like a huge hit that had way more of a budget, it kind of forces you to like try something different. And that's why we got better stuff out of that. I think.
No, I agree. And I also think it makes, like, who knows? Like, I don't want to get into, because this is just anecdotal what I was reading. So it's probably like, these actors are probably being underpaid and shit, and I don't want to support that shit.
Oh,
like,
sure,
who knows what's happening when they're cutting the budget. But I just, in an era where something like Argyle is made for $200 million, it's like, guys, what are we doing?
I don't want to hear it. And now it's disappeared.
Yeah.
And Argyle will never be talked about in 2 years.
And so it's like, what are we doing?
No one's going to remember that fucking
Where's
movie.
that money going, man?
Just
like,
flushed it right into the toilet.
I think Argyle was made for more money than Dune Part 2. And it's like, what are we doing?
I don't
what
want
are you
that.
doing?
I want to give that money to the people that are struggling in the industry.
Yeah, man.
But so one last thing about 5.
Please.
The last of the classic trilogy is it's cheap as shit. It's really hard to watch. It's kind of, but Paul Williams, who is a famous singer-songwriter from the 70s, who wrote like Rainbow Connection and a bunch of classic 70s songs that have been redone a billion times. Paul Williams plays one of the apes in that movie. That's amazing. Like crazy. That's like getting David Bowie to play one of the apes, kind of. So that part's kind of cool.
It's like David Bowie showing up for 10 seconds in Firewalk with Me, and you're like,
there you go.
All right.
There you go. Oh man, I'm so sad that I learned that they were gonna have him back in the new series.
He passed away, and then he ends up being like a giant tea kettle or something. Like,
I know, it's like sure, why not?
Yeah, that was a bum. I was bummed about that too. I'm like, that would have been so cool.
But anyway, so in 5, we're also like in like California, not really in a different location. Like it just seems like we're in someone's like big backyard the whole movie. And you don't really change that location, but the movie ends with like basically open-ending it back to the original movie. Yeah. Which was like, so the planet was destroyed in the second Planet of the Apes movie, but because Cornelius and Zira traveled back in time to the 70s and restarted the talking ape genealogy, timeline, bloodline, they inadvertently restarted the Planet of the Apes. Yeah. So because of that, they repopulated the world with talking apes. And so the talking apes thing still happens. It just happens differently than it did in the first one. Yeah. And so what they did was they changed the timeline in a way where they were like, hopefully we don't blow up the planet this time. Yeah. And this time we get to like, have this harmonious humans and apes live together thing. Yeah. But so it took 5 movies for them to get to that kind of like end game. Yeah. And now here we are with the new trilogy, and we're in the 4th film. Yeah. And we're still kind of like getting started with something that I am not quite sure what it is.
Well, let's get
like
into
what's
that.
the end game with these movies?
I'm so excited to talk about that because I had some thoughts. And I feel based on little tidbits you've dropped throughout the episode, little clues for the people that have been paying attention. I feel like maybe you and I have different feelings about this movie.
Did you really like it?
I didn't. I liked it. I wouldn't say I really liked it.
Wow.
I liked it. I liked it.
I can't wait to talk about this then, because I came out of that movie mostly disappointed, and also fatigued.
Well, listen, and this might be important context. So my wife and I recently went and watched the first Omen, and she's a big Omen fan. And I'm not so much. The first Omen's fine.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I really, I went in low expectations because I'm not a huge Omen fan, and I ended up really liking the first Omen.
Me too.
And she was disappointed because she wanted something that felt more like the original Omen.
Oh, interesting.
And for me, the worst parts of that movie were when it really leaned into like. Sorry,
the Omen.
Yeah,
stuff.
sorry, Omen fans. The way they do the 666 is silly. The idea of it is silly. As somebody that grew up in an evangelical background, the way they treat the mark is silly.
Yeah,
and the way it's depicted is silly. But the rest of the movie, it's like the director, the person that directed the first Omen, was really swinging for the fences. Like they took.
I agree.
Like if you just handed me that script, I'd be like, well, this is kind of bad. But the way they directed, it's like, oh, you got a real movie on. You made a real movie out of this.
Got some like stylized, well directed, like interesting visuals, and I love that about it.
So I bring that up to say maybe I benefited from. I enjoy the Planet of the Apes movies that I've seen, but I'm not like super invested, and I wonder if maybe that changed our experiences.
Interesting, yeah. That looseness of it maybe makes you less concerned about like the things that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, the future of it. But before we get into that. This movie, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the IMDb description is many years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. This was directed by Wes Ball, who directed the Maze Runner movies. Stars Freya Allen from The Witcher. She plays a character named May. Kevin Durand, who was also just in Abigail, so he's having a pretty good year for himself.
Oh, nice. Very
William H. Macy, as you mentioned. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a tomato, as of this recording, it has a tomato score of 80%. And an audience score of 80%. The consensus there is carving out a new era for the Planet of the Apes with lovable characters and rich visuals. Kingdom doesn't take the crown as best of the franchise, but handily justifies its continued reign. So we're going to start with spoiler-free thoughts. And I think we can jump off of this question that we got from our Discord. If you want to be a part of our Discord, you can do that over Patreon. Jake Hefner.
I'm joining right now.
Jump on. Jake Hefner asks, is Kingdom a worthy sequel to the Caesar trilogy? Does it set itself up for a new trilogy of 8 movies? Does it work without Andy Serkis or Caesar? Let's focus on, is it a worthy follow-up to the Caesar trilogy? And does it work without Andy Serkis? Because I think at the end of this episode, we're going to get into where this might potentially lead us in the future.
Sure. Well, I guess I wasn't aware that the Caesar trilogy was like the end of that like story line. Like, I guess they didn't really allude to that in the marketing at all. And I wasn't, I mean, other than the fact that there's no Caesar.
Yeah.
I didn't, and we're like many
generations later. Yeah. I think it was smart that they did that. Cause like when I was looking at stuff, it specifies like on Wikipedia or whatever, it's like 300 years later. And I'm like, well, if that's true, then I have questions, but those are spoiler questions. So we'll get there later. But I think the loosey-goosey many generations later, like sure, whatever.
I was a little disappointed with that because I was like, well, then what? Okay. They still mention Caesar.
Yeah.
Is this spoiler free?
Right now we're spoiler free.
So can I say that Caesar is mentioned?
Caesar is mentioned. Yeah, no, I think you're in the clear on that one.
Okay. Yeah. So that's as spoilery as I'll get right now. And so at least you have that loose connection to the original trilogy, or the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, the reboot trilogy.
How do we call this?
Dude, I was trying to talk about it with my wife, and so I was trying to talk about the Caesar movies and then the original ones. And so like when you can't say Rise is, it's the original of the reboot, but it's not the original. So I think I landed on the reboot trilogy, which just starts with Rise and Caesar.
But it's like the first of the reboot, the first half of the reboot trilogy.
Yeah.
Is that the way to say it?
The original reboots, not the Tim Burton one.
So I guess I get what I want to say is that I'm currently experiencing a fatigue.
Yeah.
That is directly a result of getting invested in a new thing and knowing that because we live in a franchise maniacal world and money maniacal world, everyone wants to like extend these things out as far as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And to the detriment of people that want a cohesive story that starts and ends. And as a result, what we have is all of these really great shows and movies that started off with the idea that they were going to have a trilogy or a saga or whatever. If you listen to who directed the first of the reboot trilogy, the James Franco one.
Yeah, why don't I remember that right off the top of my head?
I can't remember either, but I'm sure you'll find it. But the point I'm trying to make is that director was like, I'm making a trilogy.
Yeah.
And by the time we get to the end of this thing, Rupert Wyatt, okay. Yeah. And I'm making a trilogy, and by the time we get to the end of this thing, we're gonna have this like really rich, like respectful a retelling reboot of the Planet of the Apes kind of like sci-fi concept.
Yeah.
And so what now fast forward to now, and what we have is 4 movies in a new reboot trilogy that kind of each one of them are trying to start their own trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get to the second one with Gary Oldman, is that the Matt Reeves one?
Yeah, that's the first Matt Reeves one. Yeah.
So once Matt Reeves took the reins, I was like, oh, this is going to be fucking awesome. I can't wait to see what Matt Reeves does with this shit. And he also was like, I've got a trilogy idea and we're going to go with that. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. And then the third one is directed by someone completely different.
No, Dawn and War were both.
Oh, it's Matt Reeves?
Yeah, it's Matt Reeves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the third one is like, okay, now we've got the second of Matt Reeves' trilogy.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see how he wraps this up. But we didn't really get a wrap up. We got
Caesar dies at the end of that one. Spoilers.
Yeah,
for that one.
But what was the goal? What was the goal? What was the end game? Was that like he wanted to? I guess it was like they want humans gone.
I think.
And so
what they settle on is they find like their new home. This is their new home, and humans happen to be gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also one of those things where it's like all the bad humans are gone, but we still have this like good human that gets to like live with us. And so I guess there's that kind of like the struggle in the Planet of the Apes movies is largely related to racial struggles in our real world and struggles that we have with other humans in our real world. And it's supposed to hold this mirror up to society that's like, this is how we treat people that are different than us, and this is how we treat people who have different ideas on how we should live. And usually it ends up with people going to war. And then whatever happens at the end of that war is then now the world that you have to live in. And you're just kind of like a part of it in some like, you weren't asked to be a part of it, but here it is. And so with the sequel reboot, with the reboot sequel remake trilogy, it's like, I guess the end goal is like, the whole like weight thing of like, do we want to live in harmony and get rid of the human, or do we want to get rid of the humans and just be apes, or do we want to live in harmony and there are good people? And so I guess that's what those movies explored. And then they put the bow on it with Caesar dying, and then they were like, okay, well, I guess we found this harmonious life where it's like we'll live with good humans and we'll live with our apes. And so I'm like, okay, I guess that's the end of that trilogy, right?
Yeah.
So now we've got the beginning of this new one, which I was unaware is a new trilogy.
Yeah.
I thought we were just gonna get a sequel to the last one.
Yeah.
which it kind of is, but it kind of isn't.
It could, if this ended up being the last one, it could be it ends on a definitive enough note, but it definitely lays the seeds for like. Well, I think so.
You know what it lays the seeds for? And I don't know. Maybe are we still in the non?
Wait, let's keep it non. How about this? I'm gonna take us through the movie, and I'm gonna get us to the seeds. But to answer Jake Hefner's question, for me, I do think it is a worthy enough sequel to the Caesar trilogy. Having just rewatched it, that one meditates a lot on the nature of war, like especially in Dawn, which I think is the best of those movies. It's kind of like humans are good, apes are bad, and it's Caesar learning that those lines don't, like Koba is the one that starts the war. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't matter who you are. There's always going to be people that want war or like are trying to create divisiveness, even within groups and stuff like that. And so this is not as heady or as introspective or as psychological as those movies ended up being. It's more just of an adventure movie in an ape world.
Yeah.
But I think the Apes movies get to be that. I think I could live with a trilogy. Okay. They're like, hey, here's your fun adventure ape sci-fi movies. I'm like, that's fine. Not all of these need to be the meditation on like war and loss and what it means to be a human.
Sure,
like that's great if we can do it, but it doesn't need to be for me.
Doesn't it feel like they're still doing that?
They're going for it, but it's just not.
It's not the A story.
Yeah, the truth is,
story.
I don't think this one is as tight. And we'll get into. There's just some. I can give this. This is an spoiler-free example. Certain elements are not as tight. Like there's a couple times where Noah, our main ape boy, is falling, or like he gets in a trap that's like what's the name of those traps where like a loop goes around your ankle and pulls you up, and he fumbles with it.
Like rabbit trap, or whatever,
and he fumbles with it like a person would, and it's like, I don't know, dude, he's got hands for feet. I don't think this trap would work the same way.
And he also used his feet for hands earlier in a way that was like, oh yeah, I forgot that their feet are hands.
Yeah, and so there's a little bit, it's lacking a little bit of the attention to detail that it felt like those Caesar movies had. It
feels like it went through 7 rewrites.
Well, specifically, and this is more spoiler stuff, so but there's specifically a plot element that felt from a different draft that they put into, because there's certain characters that act as if the Caesar thing just happened a week ago. Right. Whereas other characters are like,
which makes it even more confusing when they say many generations later.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. So going through the movie, we're introduced to our main guy, Noah, and his 8 pals. They're part of the Eagle Clan, and their bit is they raise eagles, which I think I'm interested to know if there's other animal clans.
That part's cool.
Yeah,
I like that part.
So what did you think about this? Is our, speaking of many generations later, we're seeing a society, they've built, it looks like radio towers that they built. They're kind of like houses around and stuff like that. I've realized I think I'm a sucker for that shit. Like, hey, in post-apocalyptic
repurposing
old society. I think it got me reflecting on with like Fallout and everything. Like, I think people like apocalypse movies because fundamentally we either don't like the society we live in or we don't like people. On some level, we're like, this world would be cool if just everybody else was gone.
Well, because it's also scary. The visual is scary to see like a city in ruins all covered with foliage and all of that. But it's not new imagery.
No, especially if you play Last of Us, Horizon.
Right.
Yeah.
right. Yeah. But I will say this movie is beautiful.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful movie, and the visual effects are incredible. Like there were many times I leaned over to my friend and was like, these visual effects are stunning. Like there are rarely any moments where you're like, oh, that looked kind of bad or whatever. It just, and honestly, I think the worst looking stuff is when they're in the broad daylight.
Yeah.
And they're like out on the beach or something. That part was like, okay, maybe we need shade over these guys.
Yeah. But they're definitely, ever since Rise, we've definitely leaned into these movies being like special effects showcases.
Yes.
And I think they definitely work on that level. So
for sure.
Classic, like Noah's out to find a different egg because his egg gets broke. And of course, while he's gone, the bad guys attack. And his dad,
which was cool.
It was cool.
Was all on board. Yeah.
And so he has to go on a classic hero's journey, and he runs into a human, not named Nova. We learn, Although I did think that was a funny bit. Like we call them all Nova.
We call them all Nova.
We call them
yeah.
all Nova. And Raka, who is an orangutan, that is great. And
I
light
like
spoilers,
that character.
leaves too soon. Leaves too soon.
I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
I like that character a lot.
Well, especially I don't know about you, but rewatching the Caesar trilogy, Maurice, the orangutan that he befriends.
Yeah,
in
Maurice
the
is
Maurice is the
so
best.
good.
And we see
The
Maurice
best.
briefly at the beginning. I was like, oh, Maurice, you're the best.
I know, and maybe this character is a descendant of Maurice. So who knows?
Yeah, because it's more complicated than that, but I was going to say they worship Caesar. Basically, Caesar is Monkey Jesus, basically.
Yeah, Caesar's Monkey Jesus. Yeah.
So,
which makes sense. I like that.
Yeah.
And also in the original trilogy, they did the same thing with Cornelius, or was it Cornelius?
Well, Cornelius' son was Caesar, right? That's where we get the Caesar name.
Right,
yeah.
right. So Cornelius's son Caesar.
Yeah.
Which really only they share the name. There isn't that much similarities from the Caesar of the classic trilogy and the Caesar of the reboot trilogy, except they're both kind of strong-willed leaders of a revolution kind of thing. But Caesar ends up being kind of worshipped as because Caesar was the one that taught them that ape shall not kill ape and things like that, which they also brought into the sequel trilogy or the reboot trilogy. But it does make sense that they would like worship Caesar as like this messiah ape, because he was the only one that could talk and the only one that could like was hyper intelligent,
and he's the one that brought everybody, because he's the one that steals the canisters from the place and gets everybody
right. He's the origin of the talking apes, basically, in this trilogy.
So now, gang, if you've been enjoying this and you haven't seen Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and you're like, I don't want to be spoiled, now is the time to pull your chute, because
here we go.
We're going to get into May, who, again, they originally called her Nova, a callback to the original movies and a callback to the character in War for the Planet of the Apes. And it turns out not only can May speak, but her and Noah team up, because the main bad guy, Proximus Caesar, who's taken the name Caesar, is trying to get human weapons of war. I actually really like this bad guy. I thought they did a good job with him and his motivations.
That guy was cool.
Yeah, it's because it made sense. He's talking about like evolution. He's like, I want to jumpstart this shit. I want to skip the line, basically.
Well, he wants to get to the thing that like I had hoped we would already be seeing,
which is more technologically advanced.
Yeah, like so the original book has their like technologically advanced society. They've got buildings and planes and cars and shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, how many years, I'd like to know how many years we are currently in now in Kingdom from the James Franco movie.
Yeah.
Is it like 2,000 years or 1,000 years?
According to Wikipedia, trustworthy source Wikipedia, it's 300 years.
Okay. So 300 years isn't that long.
Yeah.
And maybe not long enough for the monkeys to have developed like technology.
Yeah.
But at the very least, shouldn't they be able to speak less disjointedly?
Honestly, that was confusing, because when at the beginning of the movie they sign, and I'm like, well, we're still signing, because by the third movie, Caesar's just talking. He's not really bothering with signing anymore.
Right.
But then as we meet more apes, and especially once we get to Proximus, they just talk. Some of the apes, like Raka, just talks. And so it's like, well, so why is it harder for some and not others?
And that's what made the whole bridging the movies confusing to me.
Yeah.
Because it was like, well, in the third Planet of the Apes, in the one with Woody Harrelson.
Yeah,
War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
There are monkeys that like are almost fluent in that, but most of them aren't.
Yeah.
But they're like, and then there are the ones that are like, Koba, sick of way of life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But if we're 300 years, if we're like, let's say we're 100 years after war in Kingdom, we're still broken language.
Yeah.
Like, and also Noah was like, me climb high, grab egg, and in the beginning, and then later on he's like, I don't know what to do with my friends. I'm worried about it. And I'm like, what's going on here?
I wonder if it was a filmmaking choice of trying to ease audiences into that I don't know, or maybe a fear that people would think it was silly, and so you need to ease them into it. But I'm like, we're 4 movies deep, guys.
We're 4 movies deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk like us already.
So that I totally agree with. I think the even more glaring one, and this is where we get into spoilers. We find out. So May and Noah team up to keep Proximus Caesar from getting tanks and missiles and shit. Like I didn't realize at the end, like that's a full on like missile silo. Like Proximus could have done some real damage.
Yeah, and then at one point we even get like you see tanks in there, and I'm like, monkeys in tanks.
Yeah,
this is the movie we need. And then they destroy it. They just destroy it.
Well, and so what we find out is not only, and we run into William H. Macy, who appears to be from a completely different group of speaking humans.
It doesn't make sense.
The part that tracks with me is that, okay, some of the humans, because what we established in From Rise to War is the virus breaks out in Rise. Most of humanity is wiped out by Dawn. Those who haven't are immune to the virus. Then in War, we reveal, but those immune to the violence will eventually lose their ability to speak, and will start to be dumb. And so basically, you're screwed no matter what.
Evolving, essentially.
Yeah. And so, like, if you say to me, okay, but an even smaller percentage could still speak, that's fine. But when we're introduced to William H. Macy, it's May's looking at a Kurt Vonnegut book. He's like, "Oh, Vonnegut, yeah, there's not a lot of fiction in here, a lot of Rome." And it's like, whoa, are you running into a lot of Vonnegut in the 300 years after the apocalypse?
300 years after the apocalypse.
And so characters are talking as if they were around when humans were around. Right. And we're introduced,
and not just that, like when we were around.
Yeah, and we're introduced to we find out May is part of a group of people that presumably, because the one lady, she's a great actress, but I can never pronounce her name right. She's in full on hazard
quarantine outfit, hazmat stuff.
Yeah, she's quarantined, and the whole point is May's trying to get this disc to reboot the satellite so other people can communicate. And so it's like, whoa. Hold on a second. And I don't know about you, but when this was happening, because I kind of knew we were leading to something like this, I kind of felt it. I was like, are they going to introduce the idea that maybe some of these people, because the way May spoke was very modern.
Yeah, modern.
And it was
our
like,
time.
Are we going to introduce the idea that maybe some of these people were like cryogenically frozen?
Yeah.
And then I was like, is that stupid? And then I'm like, DJ, what are you saying? This is a franchise with time travel and talking apes. Like,
it's a sci-fi series. It's sci-fi.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm hoping, I kind of hope it is something like that, as opposed to, no, they were just quarantined for 300 years. And like, then why are we just going for this disc now? Two, how have you not, the apes have changed in 300 years. How has humanity not changed at all?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, right. And also like, I was in the James Franco one, they like teased that like a spaceship was taking off into space.
The Icarus. Yeah.
The Icarus, which was the name of the ship from the Charlton Heston one.
Yeah.
And they're like, and then at the end of the movie, you learn that it's like they lost communications with it. And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, we're going to get like the Charlton Heston shit.
Yeah.
Or at least some version of it, you know, because this movie didn't replicate the original in every way. And so while watching Kingdom, I was like, okay, well, now's the time for them to be like someone from the past landed here.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was thinking this Nova character, what was her real name again? May.
Yeah.
I was thinking this May character is like, I'm like, she's too young to be an astronaut, so she's not like from the Icarus. But what if the Icarus in this timeline was like, it had like people in it, and the idea was to like cryogenically freeze people and go off into space and find maybe like another place to live or whatever. And what we're seeing is like a young girl who maybe the ship crashed and her cryogenic tube opened and then she like came out. And I was like kind of on board with like, because I was like, well, one thing the original Planet of the Apes movie had was that huge twist, right? And I'm like, it's been a while since we've gotten like a huge twist in a Planet of the Apes movie.
Definitely.
And so I'm like, this is their chance. Because the last thing I want to see is apes fighting humans again, humans rising up again, and then leading to another fucking human and monkey war. Yeah. Which I'm like, dude, I don't want it. So I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, there's a hope that we're gonna get some like wacky sci-fi shit out of this. And what we ended up getting was like Fallout like vault shelter.
Yeah, it definitely made me think of Fallout. It made me think of Silo. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? So we're gonna get people because at the end of the movie they establish the connection with the human with
Other
this
people.
satellite thing,
Yeah.
and then they connect with other humans, and then there's just all these people going like, oh my god, yes, we're alive in Fort Wayne, and there's just all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, so what? What now? We're gonna mobilize humans again to fight apes? What's the end game here? Like,
Well, I'm down. See, this is where I'm down. I'm down if we do, because I do like the setup. I agree with you that I think that's, and again, that's when I talked about earlier where it felt like two drafts. I felt like there's a draft. The humans part of the story felt like a draft that took place immediately after War for the Planet of the Apes.
yeah.
And then they're like, no, but we want to see ape society evolve a little bit, so we're going to push it forward 300 years. But they didn't change the human stuff to reflect the fact that, like, what have these guys been doing for 300 years?
Right.
If it's not, and this is where I get into like wild speculation or what I'd like to see. I do think the fan in me would accept something like in the next movie where they're like, yeah, we launched a rocket called the Icarus that was experimenting with time dilation.
Yes.
And we lost it, unfortunately, but we used that technology that we all skipped ahead 300 years basically. And so then you get another tease like, guess what? We're still doing it. And I'm down if this movie does well for a trilogy of these movies. And then we get into a full on, we are going back to the Icarus is back, another trilogy of those movies.
But I've been waiting for that since they teased it in the James Franco one. And we're going back to what you mentioned, which was, you're not super invested in the Planet of the Apes saga.
Yeah.
You like the movies here and there, and the new reboot movies are good, but you're not super invested in like something that feels connected respectfully to the original trilogy, or taking some themes from the original trilogy and sprinkling them in the new one. To me, it's like, well, if you're going to tease, okay, so now I have to accept that the Icarus tease in the James Franco movie was literally just a fan service Easter egg.
Yeah.
Like that's that. Like that's not coming back. We're not going to do that. And after Kingdom, I'm aware that they're just not going to do that. And if they are going to do that, maybe it's not until after this fucking trilogy.
Yeah.
And it goes back to my fatigue of like, well, I don't even know what word of mouth is going to be like on this movie, because like, what would I tell someone who's like, I kind of look interested in looking at that Planet of the Apes movie? I would just be like, well, it's kind of like Avatar. It's like, it exists. It's beautiful. It's well made, but the story is just kind of all over the place and not really what you go for anymore.
Yeah. Well, I will say, and we're recording this, this episode drops on Monday, but we're recording before that. As of this recording, according to Deadline, quote, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes posted a very good Friday at 22 million. Thanks to a late night business. Isn't that far from the Friday results of Tim Burton's 2001, which was 24 million. And
what's that?
But it's ahead of Rise, which had a 19 million opening Friday, and it's just a little bit light of War for the Planet of the Apes, which had 22 million. So right now it's on track with the previous reboot movies.
Okay, so we'll probably get another one. And
I do like the idea. What I was going to say originally is I do like this idea of, I get what you're saying, like more conflict between humans and apes, but I do like that we've spent time with both May and Noah, who you would assume are going to be the main figureheads of this conflict, and it adds weight to it. Like, I care about both of these characters. They already have a previous
I did end up caring about the characters.
They have a previous relationship, and so their conflict is going to be fraught. What I would like to see is, I would like to see stuff like, we're not dealing with nuclear stuff in this version of the franchise. It's genetic.
Not yet, really, it seems.
So if we're not going to do super mutants and stuff like that. But you could do, like, in that 300 years, we've experimented with evolving ourselves. And so maybe you get, like, what were the things called in the alien Prometheus or whatever? The engineers or something? Yeah,
the engineers.
Yeah, get like giant, like whatever. We've been like, so maybe you get this franchise's version of the mutants.
Even that is more interesting.
Yeah.
Because you've seen H.G. Wells' Time Machine, or like, about H.G. Wells' Time Machine, or the Time Machine movie with what's his name?
What are they called? The Morlocks, the underground.
The Morlocks, they're like I understand that in the Time Machine we go like 11,000 years into the future, but it's like, I guess I'm just sick of humans in the Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah.
And so like if we had like this evolved version of them, let's say like sure, give them a little telepathy even. Why not?
Yeah,
who cares?
Well, and again, I think that's an homage back to the original. Like you said, this is a sci-fi franchise, so that gives you a little bit of license to play around. And again, you play around with like, okay, so we got the Eagle tribes. What are the other tribes doing? To your point, we destroyed the base Noah was going, or Proximus Caesar was going after.
Yeah.
Maybe Noah's like, well, now the humans are back. I need to find another one of those with tanks and stuff.
Yeah,
and
there's many of those or something.
I do like the idea if we do eventually get back to a version of the rocket crashing, which by the way, when they were doing satellite stuff, I was like, wait, are they gonna like call the rocket back? Are they?
Dude,
what's?
They got us so close. Like I was telling my friend Matt, I was like, okay, this is the ending I would have loved.
Yeah,
you do the whole thing, but you cut all the humans out of it. There's no humans. Maybe there's a moment where, which is really one of the only moments I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And maybe call me a nostalgia horror or whatever.
Yeah.
But that scene where they were using the Jerry Goldsmith kind of like score and from the original.
Yep.
And the
with the nets in there going, yeah. There was such a callback.
I was like, fucking cool. So what if we didn't meet this Nova character? I keep forgetting her real name.
Yeah.
May. So what if we never met May and we just have this like fully centric ape story, and then you still have Proximus, you could still do all of that. But then at the very end, because we got that one scene where he looks through the telescope and he's like, whoa.
Yep.
And it's like, what did you see? What you just had never seen the stars before?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, whatever. Maybe he saw something we didn't get to see yet.
Yeah.
And then when the girl looked at it, he was like, when she looked, it was almost like she saw something familiar or something. And I was like, what are they teasing? This is crazy. Okay, so in my version, you don't have the humans at all. You have that one scene where they're being captured, maybe.
Yeah.
They don't speak. That's it. Then you have the whole rest of the story. And then the end, the happy ending, you have Noah taking his girl, the girl ape that he's like in love with or whatever. And you have him taking her to the telescope to like look at it like they did.
Mm-hmm.
But you have her look and then look over at him and go like, what's that? And then he goes like, what do you mean? And then he looks in and then we see like a fucking thing crashing through the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then it smashes to black.
Yeah.
And I would be way more like, okay, great. We didn't need humans.
Yeah.
But maybe the next one has like the human crashing on the planet. And then you could just do like some new version of the original Planet of the Apes movie. Finally.
Can I tell you what I see them doing? If let's say we're doing a trilogy of trilogies, right? We got the Caesar trilogy, we got the Noah trilogy, and then we'll get back to what is essentially a remake of Taylor Landing or whatever. Right. I could see them, and this may be my own, what I would like to see as opposed to what I think they're actually going to do. I would like to see, I want to see, if we're saying these humans have been around for 300 years, what have they been doing? Have them, and again, like I would float the idea of maybe they've been genetically altering themselves to improve, if for no other reason, to survive the virus that's out there. Sure. And that gives you basically laying the groundwork for all the stuff we saw in the original Planet of the Apes movies. This is our version of the mutants. This is our whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe you see the conflict between this version of the conflict between the humans and apes escalate to the point where this is where we see the Statue of Liberty get nuked.
Yeah,
and this
is
or we because
see it happen.
They say at the beginning of Dawn, like humans were fighting each other until they all kind of died out. But it's like you could get it's if they're pulling out the big guns, quote unquote, like maybe this is where we actually see like Battle of New York.
I mean, there's just so much they can do, dude.
Yeah.
There's so much they can do. They could have the human perspective of the story, the underground bunker humans.
Yeah.
Be like, we have no idea what's out there and not even know about the apes.
Yeah.
And then they come out and there's like a rebuilt society that's like modern with apes.
Yeah.
You could go that way. Or you could go like, the fucking spaceship crash lands and then you deal with that. I just can't help but see that we're going to get, you know what I think it is, DJ?
No.
I think I'm personally annoyed by the perseverance of humans in the series.
You're like, get them out of here.
I just honestly, And there was that line where at the end when Noah says to May, he says like this something about the planet, and then she says it was ours first.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be like a big impactful line.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, I don't know. I think animals had it first.
Yeah. And to your point, though,
sure animals had it first.
I think it did cool moments like when they're in the base and they find the books for kids, which now that I think about it, why were there kids' books in that bunker? Anyway.
Yeah, why were there kids'
But they see the pictures of like chimps in cages, and it's like, yeah, props to them, because I thought they were going to do the thing like they did in War, where it's like, May is our friend human. All the other humans are like cattle, but May's our friend human. And it's like, no, this is more fraught than that. This is a complicated relationship.
But I feel like we explored those in the other ones.
I mean,
think we
you're not
really
wrong. You're not wrong.
And what I feel overall, DJ, is that some director gets their hands on a really hot franchise, or some writer gets tasked with writing the next one. Yeah. And they get it in their head that they're like, this one's going to be mine. Mm-hmm. This is going to be my version of it. And the problem with that is that we just keep re-exploring the same fucking shit because they want to do their version of it. And they're like, but wait, I promise. Because I've even heard this director of this one say in an interview that he has a plan for his trilogy. Yeah. And that made me feel exhausted. Yeah. Because I was like, okay, but everyone who did this wanted to do their own trilogy. And we waited to see the end result of the buildup of all these little things they've been feeding us. Yeah. And now we got to do it all over again. It's like I'm getting Batman and the pearls in the alley every time with Planet of the Apes.
Totally. Well, I get that too, and you make me think about go back to my days growing up in an evangelical community where like Christmas, or there's like a guest speaker, guest preacher, right? And they're like, their first time here, and it's they're just going to be here this one week, and they're like, listen, Jesus loves you. Like, dude, we're here, man. We know. You're really gonna go back to the Jesus love. Like, come on, man. You're not gonna do like no. We're a substitute teacher. We're gonna play it safe. But let me ask you this, Steve. The director of this Planet of the Apes movie, is also the director tasked with the Legend of Zelda adaptation. How does that make you feel?
Whoa, is that true?
That is true.
We need better writers. I'm always willing to give a director a chance with like different written materials. Yeah. But when like a director who's like this, who made like Maze Runner movies or like some of those like kind of throwaway teen movies for kids to make out in the theater while they go see. Yeah. I'm always like, I'll always give those directors the benefit, because you could look at someone's IMDb and be like, I don't know if this guy should be in charge of Planet of the Apes, let alone Legend of Zelda. Yeah. But I will say that the writing team means a lot, matters.
Well, I've got good news for you, Steve.
What is it? Is it the same writers?
The writer on Legend of Zelda is he's written the Jurassic World movies.
Okay, I gotta go. I gotta go be sad now.
He also did Safety Not Guaranteed, which is probably why he got the Jurassic World movies, because that's the same director as those two, if I'm remembering correctly, and I am. Good days and bad. But he also wrote Detective Pikachu.
That was a fun one.
That's fun. That's fine.
It's fun.
The thing I'm more worried about the Legend of Zelda movie is the Super Mario movie we got, and it's like, well, if we do the same.
The Super Mario Brothers movie was just like the safest version of that movie you could possibly do. Yeah. Without any kind of like guts or risks.
Yeah, it's basically like, hey, you remember Mario Kart, right? You remember that? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Well, wait. Hold on. Wait. It happened so fast. It's gone already. Yeah. Wait. Why did that happen? Oh no! Now we got Bowser singing on the piano. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore.
All right, dude. You know what though, man? That's made by Illumination, and I in front of both. We saw Fall Guy and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes this week, and in front of both of them there was this Despicable Me 4 trailer. And I had to explain to my wife she's like, why is there another one? I'm like, those movies make $1 billion.
They print money. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the merchandise alone, prints money.
They make, and so it's like, who the fuck are we? Like the Mario movie.
Yeah. It's not for us.
It made $1 billion. I was like, so I guess, you know what? Fuck me, I guess.
It's a toy selling machine.
Yeah.
It's a toy selling machine.
Yeah.
Just like Cars, the Cars movies. We're probably going to get way more Cars movies from Pixar because they make billions of dollars.
Yeah, man. It's just, you know, anyway, Planet of the Apes. I too, and I'm hopeful that we finally get the rocket. I want to see this universe's version of that, of the original movie. I would also like to throw out there into the universe. I don't know who holds the comic rights to Planet of the Apes. Because I don't think you could do this as a movie. But I think if you haven't already, you should definitely do a comic that's called Planets of the Apes. And it's a multiverse where the original apes, the Tim Burton apes, and the Caesar apes.
Whoa, they all meet.
Because I was like, at first I was like, well, that's dumb. I'm like, again, the original franchise has people traveling back in time through a nuclear bomb. Yeah, so I think you can get away with it. I think you can get away with it. In a comic, at least.
There isn't time travel. There isn't time travel in these movies. I'm really bummed about it.
Do you think if we get the Icarus and Taylor and a reboot of all that, you don't think they're going to loop back around to the Andy Serkis Caesar, do you?
I think it would be cool and gutsy and like hard to pull off, but it would make me really happy. It would be really pleasant if we could call this whole thing like one cohesive saga. I would love that.
Pull it Back to the Future 2 where you edit in Andy Serkis is back as Cornelius in the in the background of Rise.
Franco back. Yeah. Honestly, dude, I'm on board for bonkers. Just take it in a bonkers direction.
You know what they could do, dude? I was like, I don't know how you would do it because like the original movies didn't start at the beginning. That's what made the time loop work. This one starts at the beginning. I don't know how you do it. They open Rise with Caesar's mom, Bright Eyes, and she is the one that has Caesar and whatever. You could just either like maybe Bright Eyes instead of in the original one, Cornelius and what's the other Zira's kid is Caesar. Maybe you could just say it's Bright Eye. You know what I mean? That's how we create the loop.
Dude, why not? Yeah. Like Noah, or like you can even have Noah grow up to be like a new Caesar.
Yeah.
And then Noah births the Bright Eye, like Caesar essentially. Yeah, exactly. I mean, go for it. Like give us something. Give me something that isn't just apes versus humans again. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's all I want out of this. It's not asking much, I think. But it is hard to do, maybe. Because they know there's probably like studio executives that are like, well, the humans can't lose. Mm-hmm. And humanity can't end. Yeah. There has to be. And even Noah mentions at one point in the movie that like, you guys are really resilient. Like they really say humans are resilient. Yeah. And here's the proof of that. And it's like, okay, I love it. Like, yeah, sure. Like, fine. Humans are like cockroaches. You just can't kill them. Sure. Yeah. But let's do something different with it then. Yeah. Let's make humans be telepathic mutants. Like there's a clan of humans that are telepathic mutants. Yeah. And we'll have a war between those guys and the apes. Let's have humans from the future travel back to this time and inadvertently create the planet of the hold on, wait a second. Anyway, gang, those are our thoughts on Kingdom of the. This is my real note with the Apes franchise. I think the cleanest one outside of the original Planet of the Apes is Beneath the Planet of the Apes. There's a lot of those in the Planet of the Apes titles. The planet. Oh, because you're right. Because once you get to planet, like like the Planet of the Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the. It's just their unwieldy titles. They're unwieldy. That's it. All right, dude. I was thinking. Okay, wait. Two final thoughts. Yeah, please. One, and then a question. Yeah. One, Planet of the Apes versus Predator. Do it. I would love it. Do it. That'd be great. In the forest, roaring in the jungle, and we get like the best. You know what? Maybe just minimal dialogue, even if they speak English. We'll just have them hunting the predator and the predator hunting apes. And two, this is a really big one, DJ. Lay it on me. This is big. All right, everybody. Do you remember the trailer for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? Yeah. it opens and it almost looks like an Avatar movie. You see like a
Mhm.
beautiful jungle and there's like eagles flying and there's
Yeah.
like this voiceover.
Yeah.
And in the voiceover, you hear two people talking.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming it's Noah and his dad, maybe.
Yeah, or maybe it's Noah and the orangutan Raka.
Or maybe it's Raka.
Yeah.
And there's a mention that he sees things
Oh,
like
yeah,
before they happen.
Yeah, because that line happens in the movie, but it's a completely different context.
So what's going on here? Were they trying to allude that there's like maybe mystical, like we're sci-fi fantasy in the trailer, and it's like maybe there's like these evolved apes also have like a like almost like the Force,
Yeah,
something.
Yeah,
and
like he has a vision of the future. That'd be cool.
And I was like, is that's so? But then watching the movie, you're like, well, that's not what they.
Not at all. It's not even like hinted at in the movie.
But didn't they plant a seed sort of in
That's
that
weird.
trailer?
That's weird. Yeah, that's weird. You're right. That's weird.
It's almost like maybe they cut out
a subplot or something, like he was having visions or something.
Subplot.
Yeah.
Because they're like too much shit, convoluted shit.
Honestly, that is my main concern. Is that because the Caesar trilogy set such a specific tone that execs would be afraid to do anything too sci-fi, too like. No time travel, no mutants, no like none of that stuff.
No heightened abilities.
Yeah,
like why not?
Because it feels like,
dude. Imagine Avatar, like Avatar, the way, or like not Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar.
Yeah,
but Avatar, like
Last Airbender.
Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Imagine like monkeys with like power, like Earth abilities, like can move the water a little bit, or like move. Like, come on, man.
I think that's, you're touching on something really interesting, because I feel like that's how a lot of these franchises are dictated. It's all about what you can't do.
Yeah,
you can't do that. Honestly, that's one of the things I liked about the new Ghostbusters movie. Is for the of these new movies, it was the first time they tried new ghosts. It's like, possessor. Yeah, he possesses stuff. You got this eel in the subway system.
This nightmare one.
Yeah,
this one that looks like a fucking scary monster.
Which they didn't do anything with, but that's fine. Whatever. But it's like, okay, at least you're trying shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that's all I want from you guys. Try shit. You know?
Yeah. So that moment in the trailer really made me feel like, okay, they're trying something. Yeah. But then like coming out of the theater watching the movie, I was like, we're just gonna get another fucking humans versus apes thing, and I'm so over it.
Yeah.
Okay, and now my question.
Hit me with it.
Did you know about the Green Lantern Planet of the Apes comic series?
I am aware. I never read it, but I am aware of it.
Neither did I. I didn't read it either, but it was gifted to me, all the single issues.
Yes. And
I kind of want to read that because I'm like, I'm jonesing for mysticism and cooler sci-fi themes in my Planet of the Apes.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was talking about this with my wife. I almost never pick up tie-in comics. So like I
know, because it's like promotional commercial shit.
Yeah, but again, it's like you do get a little bit, the comics medium, you get a little bit more freedom. So it's like I don't see a reality where we get a big Planet of the Apes crossover movie. But I could see that comic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I could see a comic where, the Tim Burton's apes are hanging out with the original Charlton Heston apes.
And I would love that. I'd read that.
And like, I think the only tie-in comic I got was they did a Big Trouble in Little China, like sequel comic. Yeah. And I picked up one issue of that. I was like, I'll give this a shot. But
I bought that book because John Carpenter was like involved heavily.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things that like the appeal of it is like, well, we're never getting this movie.
What about the Mask Batman crossover?
Well, that one's a little bit different because I think that's the Mask, the movie's based off the comic. So I think that's the comic version. And the comic version,
that's true.
The comic version's way darker than the movie.
It's awful scary.
He's like a villain. Yeah. Like he's a straight up, he's not like a Looney Tune in real life.
He's like a Deadpool kind of.
Yeah, like he's kind of he's really ruining people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I never, they just did a big one, Predator versus Wolverine. It's like, I'm not picking that up.
No, don't care.
Yeah,
but what I mean? Apes versus Predator.
Apes versus Predator. You make that movie. I watched it. Apes versus Alien versus Predator.
Yeah,
make it happen. Sign me up. I am.
The apes uncover this like cave and there's like alien eggs.
Yeah, man. Dude, well, and then don't
face hugger on an ape.
Didn't we establish that aliens they take on the attributes of whatever they face hug, right?
Yes, a monkey alien, an alien.
I do find it a little upsetting that all of those franchises are all owned by Disney.
I know.
That
Well,
feels
that
a
was
little...
another thing. Didn't this one feel decidedly less violent and decidedly less like most deaths happened either in a waterfall or off camera?
I maintain you could bring Rocka back. He dies off camera.
Me
He
too.
just gets,
I thought that.
Yeah.
I thought that.
I thought he was
I
going to
would
come
love
back
that.
before the end of the movie.
Me too. I would love that to happen.
Yeah.
And I like that they use the like window symbol as like the Caesar symbol. That's cool.
Can I also say, Steve, I haven't had a chance to vent about this. I want better gorilla representation in these movies. I feel
you
like
want them to stop being big brutes.
I feel like gorillas are my guys. I feel like of the apes, I feel the strongest kinship with the gorillas, and they're always either killed or the bad guys.
They're big brutish.
Yeah, give me.
Guys,
We keep getting great orangutans. Give me a cool gorilla guy.
Remember the gorilla that was a snitch in the like
Yeah, then we got the gorilla that's a snitch in war, and then we got the gorilla that's like works with the bad guys, and he has a change of heart at the end, but then he gets killed.
Wasn't there a cool gorilla in Rise
who gets killed?
But he gets killed.
He gets killed.
But he got killed in a like a noble way.
Yeah, and there's another gorilla in war that like gets killed in a noble way. But it's like, we got Maurice in all three movies. I want the gorilla Maurice. I want the guy that's like...
they called him Donkey. That Donkey one. Yeah, that one I felt... That was a... Dude,
which I just now realized is a Donkey Kong reference. I just now realized that's a Donkey Kong callback.
Dude, that movie's good. War is good.
Dude, I was really surprised because I don't think I've seen Rise since I saw it in theaters. And that's the only Matt Reeves one, so it doesn't, in my memory, it's not as strong. It still really holds up.
It's good.
And the one thing I'll give it credit for, as great as Dawn and War are, I think Rise has it still has a little bit of that campiness that I kind of miss in these more serious ape movies. Like I kind of wish they allowed some more of from the original movies, just a little bit of that campiness back in. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. You know what I also was thinking really quick? I know this is going to be like a 2 hour, over 2 hour thing.
I'm not complaining.
The way the humans, my issue with the humans and the ape tension in all the movies, but going from Rise to War, or Dawn,
Dawn to War. It's Rise, Dawn, War.
So from Dawn to War, in Dawn we had the humans were like they were a community and they were like they had like their own little Diamond City, like Fallout 4 kind of. And I kind of like there was like a moral conundrum as an audience member, because you're like, well, obviously I want the humans to thrive and it looks like they have a nice thing going. But the apes are making it impossible. They have the truce where the humans are not allowed to cross the threshold of where the apes live. And I thought that was interesting. And then then they dealt with that, and there was the battle or whatever. And then in the third one, it's like the human ape conflict was the Woody Harrelson's like military guys don't give a shit about empathy, or like they just want to lay waste to the apes. And it's like not even a conundrum. So that was the differences between the juxtaposition between the human conflict, the human ape conflict in Dawn and War was not tiring and overused and was just reusing another thing. And so I appreciated the dynamic between humans and apes in those two movies. That was done very well. And in this one, it just feels like the human ape tension is going to be like the same shit we've seen already. I don't know. I keep coming back to it. Dude.
I think you're not wrong. And I think for me that if it was the writing was a little tighter and I had a better understanding of what these humans had been up to, which is something you can resolve in a sequel, I think I would feel more confident about maybe that conflict going in different directions. I do like.
We just have to see where it's going. We just have to wait and see what they do with it.
And hopefully, because that's another thing that impressed me with the Caesar trilogy, is they really did call their shot, man. Like in the way in Rise, the way they set up, like they never really pay off Koba's deal in Rise. No. And looking back on it, the writers of Rise did do a pass on Dawn before it went off to another writer, and they've been producers on all these movies. but you can see that they were really, and that was the back in the day where you could think ahead. Like I think when you talk about like, you know, not feeling like these franchises are thinking ahead because we've seen, you know, Tom Cruise's The Mummy. They've tried the shared universe stuff that fizzles out movie one, and so they're like, okay, well at least let this one be kind of self-contained.
Well, Star Wars is the biggest example of that with JJ switching hands with all those different directors and shit.
Dude, and that's the crazy, you know, switch directors, but don't switch. Have a writer's room.
Exactly. Where you're locked, the story is locked.
Yeah, because like we don't need to get into the Star Wars debate.
But maybe that's what it is. It's the politics of like pleasing these directors that are big names, but also because I mean, like, why not? If I'm Kathleen Kennedy, I'm like, sure, give J.J. Abrams a chance to like develop a trilogy. And then Rian Johnson, sure, give him a chance to develop some, you know, it's like I understand the politics of like a director saying like, I could even hear the meeting maybe where they're like, listen, I know you guys locked this shit in with JJ, but I've got this idea I really want to play with. And they're like, sure, go for it. But but we end up being the ones that get fucked out of that deal.
Yeah, because it's definitely those two. And, you know, people can debate at home whether they like the JJ movies or the Rian Johnson movie or whatever. But clearly those directors had never been in a meeting or like did an improv class where you learn yes and because they're like because J.J. Abrams like this and Rian Johnson's like no this and then J.J. comes back, he's like actually I'm going to go back to what I was doing, and it's like, did you guys not talk at all? Like,
and I think it's just, you know, and then you have all these writers and producers and executives and shareholders and it's a miracle that these movies are entertaining in any way when they are finally presented to you. So I understand the hardships and all the weeds in the movie making process. So when it comes to something like the Planet of the Apes movies, it's like, we're not as precious as Star Wars. We don't have to worry about ruining a franchise with a movie, but as a result, but because of that, take bigger chances. Let's just take bigger chances. We're not dealing with Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker. We have new characters that you're giving us. So give us new shit.
Somehow, either because of the franchise or because of the window we made them, we got them in right in this window where you could actually do new things with something without every fan online losing their goddamn mind about it. And you pulled up,
and they're still playing it safe.
Yeah, they're still playing it safe, but it's kind of, you know what it makes me think about is one of, I think, the best examples I can think of a continuation of a franchise is Star Trek: The Next Generation, where they took the core concept and they pushed it forward, and they're like, here's all new characters and we pushed the timeline forward. You know, it's 100 years in the future or however long in the future it is. All new characters, but the core concept's the same. And even Star Trek doesn't feel the courage to do that anymore. They're like, well, what if Captain Pike had his own spin-off or something? Or what if we did more Picard? And it's like, no, you guys were the ones... We allowed you to do it. And same with Planet of the Apes. We allowed you. You are one of the few franchises that allowed yourself or were allowed to do new characters.
Yeah.
So take advantage of that.
Right. But there's so much fear in deviating from what has already generated money. But the thing is like, if you go back to the 80s, which is right when where we started talking about this shit. I don't know why I'm all like out of focus right now, but but if you go back to the 80s, that's when they were like doing like Beetlejuice and shit. Like imagine pitching Beetlejuice today. This couple dies, they're stuck in the house, and then there's this pervert that like bothers them the whole movie. They're like, no,
well, imagine
we can't sell those toys.
Imagine I did buy those Beetlejuice toys,
but I bought those fucking toys, dude, because they took a chance.
Imagine you go in to pitch Beetlejuice, and I'm getting a little loose in the timeline because it's around the same time, but they were like, sure, but can you make it Poltergeist? Can you can you fit it in with the Poltergeist franchise that we're doing? So instead of this new Beetlejuice thing, fuck that. Let's do more of this Poltergeist thing.
Because look at these numbers.
Yeah, man.
Look at these numbers with Poltergeist. If you make it like Poltergeist, make it scary.
It's it's just a bummer. It's a bummer. It's just a bummer, man.
It's a bummer. But I will say this, and I'll end this on a positive note.
Please do.
We can speculate all we want on how these filmmakers, writers will handle the next installment of the Planet of the Apes franchise. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face. all we can do is wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
If we get, because I really came out of that movie thinking, oh man, audiences aren't gonna, the word of mouth on this movie is not gonna spread.
Yeah.
They're not gonna be like, you just have to see it. It's fucking incredible. It's a good, like, I can't imagine someone coming out of that movie and going like, I need to see that again. I need to tell all my friends to go see it.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm worried word of mouth will be like the last nail in the coffin for this franchise, maybe.
Yeah.
But if it makes as much money as you're saying it has already,
Yeah.
and that doesn't taper off in a big way,
Mhm.
we'll probably get another one at least.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to see what happens
Yeah.
there. And I'll be hopeful that the filmmakers and writers will take this human ape conflict in a more interesting direction.
All right. On that note, Steve, remind the kids where they can find you and what you're up to.
You can find me at Steve Zaragoza on all the socials, and I do a pretty bonkers podcast with my comedian friend Mike Falzone called Dynamic Banter. And I also stream on Twitch and do little music things here and there. Oh, and I have a show. When does this come out? Monday?
Monday, what is it, 13th?
Okay. On the 17th, Friday I'm
the
doing
17th.
a live show called Movie Wanna at this
Love
place
it.
called the Green Room in Sherman Oaks. And it's a Mystery Science Theater type show on steroids is how I can describe that. And you can smoke weed in the room that we perform in. And there's like hotboxing going on. And you get free joints and free edibles. It's kind of like a big, fun grab bag of stoner stuff and movie stuff all at once. And want to hear something crazy?
Yes.
This is our second show, and our theme is monkey movies.
Love it.
It just so happens.
Yeah.
So come check that out at 8:00 at the Green Room in Sherman Oaks if you're in LA or around that area for Movie Wanna.
Is there a link to that I can put in the description?
There's
Yes.
a bit.ly that takes you to the Eventbrite page.
All
and
right.
I'll send you that.
Please do. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. You can follow the show everywhere that matters at Only Stupid Answers. But on Twitter /X, you're going to want to yank the vowels out of stupid. We've been trying some new stuff on the channel. I've been reviewing the new X-Men show. Sal and I were talking about Superman's new costume in the James Gunn movie. Check out those videos. And gang, we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Oh, and remember, ape together strong.